An identity parade and age assessment of some of the 81 people arrested following the gang rape of 8 women in Krugersdorp are yet to be conducted. Some of the suspects appeared in the Krugersdorp Magistrate's Court today. They are yet to be linked to the gang rape of the women and robbery of the film crew last Thursday. Well, to unpack more on these raids, we're joined now by crime expert and senior researcher and policing expert at the Institute for Security Studies. That's Dr. Johan Burger. Dr. Burger, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, there's been lots said about these raids that are being conducted and the effectiveness really, especially in responding to the crime of the gang rapes that has taken place. Your own assessment here.
Yeah, good evening. And just one correction, I'm no longer with the Institute for Security Studies. I'm an independent crime analyst. So, yeah, I think, you know, looking at what's happening in relation to the gang rape, then, of course, I think one could say that the police neglected to attend to complaints about the activities of the illegal miners and the Zamas for far too long. And now, in some ways, it looks like they are overreacting. But it's sometimes very difficult to satisfy all the critics, I think, in view of the seriousness of the crimes that happened during this incident and the public outcry. Of course, that the police have no choice but to have to put in place as much of their resources as is necessary to successfully conclude the investigation into these crimes.
Of course, you know, the distinction that some people make here, Dr. Burger, is that the kind of operation that police are conducting now that is seemingly targeted at identifying those that are illegal migrants in the country that don't have the necessary documentation to be here and that are involved in illegal mining. This is work that could have been done last week, last month. The big question, of course, is about will the women that were gang raped last week Friday get justice in the end?
Yeah, I mean, that is the obvious question. And of course, you know, it's a justifiable criticism of the police that they've waited so long before they acted. There's more than enough evidence that members of the communities, especially those living in the West Village area, have been complaining about the illegal miners. And it's not about the illegal mining activity as such, although that in itself should have been investigated and dealt with. But the fact that they, to a large extent, if we have to believe all the complaints that we've seen, is the fact that many of these illegal miners, the Zamas, were actually terrorizing the locals in the surrounding communities, and that their calls on the police to deal with this have not been answered. The police, for all we know, simply ignored this. And now they have to deal with what happened during this incident. And of course, I think we all are hoping that the police are able to make the necessary connections in terms of the evidence, the samples, the DNA samples and other evidence, and will be able to successfully identify those who perpetrated not just the rapes. I mean, that certainly is the most serious of the crimes that happened there. But there were also large-scale acts of aggravated robbery and so forth. And hopefully they would be able to link those amongst the illegal miners that were responsible for those crimes.
You talk about the need then and the role that DNA is going to play in this case. We know that that's also one of the areas that has been facing significant difficulties, especially where we look at the kind of backlog that is being faced in the country's laboratories. I think in excess of about 56,000 cases that are still waiting for finalization.
Yeah, that's another sad story, of course, and if we have to believe the Minister of Police, then there appears to be some progress in terms of addressing those backlogs. And now, of course, what they will have to do seemingly is to prioritize some of these cases. And I mean, to the victims of rape, wherever they are, all of them certainly have the right to believe that their rape justifies to be prioritized. But it's clear from what we have heard from police sources in recent days is that the police are now prioritizing the rapes connected to the Krugersdorp incident and are looking at having the results quite soon, which means that some of the other backlogs will have to wait a little longer. So that in itself, of course, is another debate.
Of course, it really points to the biggest problem that faces our criminal justice system, especially when trying to respond to crimes such as rape, because every quarter we're told about the number of rapes that are being reported. But when you look at the kind of work and investment that has been done to clear the backlog, it doesn't speak to a level of urgency, and it's only when cases of a high profile that those cases are prioritized. But let's remember that there are cases before the laboratories that are over 2 years old.
Yes, and I mean, this is absolutely right. You know, it's a sad, sad story as far as the police are concerned. And I think, you know, from a research point of view, and certainly at the Institute, we often raise the issue, is that the police appear to be rushing, you know, in a sort of bushfire approach, and everything now, especially those that are highly publicized, now causes the police to run after that particular incident and prioritize it. What is needed, perhaps, and I would agree that there's no quick solution to the situation. We will have to just accept that this is going to be how things will be handled in the foreseeable future. What is required is that the police needs to embark on an urgent internal reform process of the police service. And there's more than enough studies and reports by experts about what needs to be done. So this is the urgent thing. Until this happens, we will have a situation where the police will be rushing after highly publicized incidents such as this, and to the neglect of all the other cases that may be as serious as this.
All right, as you heard today, independent policing analyst, Dr. Johan Burger.